Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic, though a little curious. I'm looking at this list of infielders, and I'm wondering who's playing where. Can you tell me who you think the Mariners are rolling out at first, second, and third? Because I can't for the life of me figure it out.
Well, I think right now they'll roll out Luke Raley and Donovan Solano in some kind of modified platoon at first base. Shortstop is J.P. Crawford. I know that one. And then the other two spots are a little different. I expect Dylan Moore to be the third baseman as of now. Like if I look at the roster and what they have, I expect Dylan Moore to be the third baseman. And then some combination at second base of Ryan Bliss, Leo Rivas, kid named Miles Mastrobuoni that they picked up from the Cubs, any one of the utility infielders. So it's like if you're a utility infielder that can play second and third, you might have a chance on the Mariners. And I do think like they may add one guy to fill one of those spots that's like a little more established, that they can do it that way. But right now, this is what they have. If I had to do a roster projection, I'm putting Dylan Moore at third base and Bliss and those guys at second and third, or second base.
Ryan, thanks for sorting that out for us. We're sitting here scratching our heads trying to figure out what the heck is going on. What are your first impressions of that lineup out there, those guys out there on the diamond? Potentially, I should say.
I would say underwhelming. It's not like I don't think they're good players, but we had expected them to add, and what they did is they added one player, like a 37-year-old utility player that isn't very good at defense. And so to me that's an issue. Like I'm not, Dylan Moore is a nice utility player, but he's not an everyday player. We kind of proved that in 2020 when he tried to play second base. Ryan Bliss is a nice prospect, but we saw some swing and miss flaws in the times that he did come up. I know there were a few people clamoring that he should play every day, but I think he got exposed a little bit. I'm sure he's worked on that this offseason, but I just think it's underwhelming. Like Donovan Solano is a nice piece to add if you sign somebody else. Like if you added an established third baseman, or if you were able to complete a trade for Nico Horner, adding Donovan Solano as like an extra piece to your roster is a good signing. He's a good player, but when that's your only signing thus far, I can understand why fans are angry.
You're right, and that fans are really angry. And I think when I've mentioned, I'm surprised that they haven't added anyone else, I've seen a few responses of, I don't know why you're surprised at all, to which I don't take personally at all. But I think I wanted to kind of flip that as a question to you, and I'll say, not just are you surprised, but is what we've seen this offseason in line with like where the Mariners should be? Because Ryan, I'm surprised because they say that they're contending and they've painted it as being contenders. Dipoto likes making trades, likes making moves. I did expect more than this.
Yeah, I'm surprised in the sense that like there have been so minimal moves. Even like in all those years, Jerry loves to play on the peripheral parts of the 40-man roster and pick up guys or make trades. I think they're in a spot where prospects aren't as valued, and I wrote about this a little, I think earlier this week, just about, or I think it was Sunday maybe, they just, so many teams are trying to contend. They don't want to give up major league talent for prospects. Like prospects are valued. The Mariners farm system, according to The Athletic, ranks number one. It's great, it's good value, and it's really good to have these prospects to help them out down the road. But right now, in this moment where they need to fill spots on their big league roster, the prospects aren't helping them because they can't trade. There's only, two teams that are really kind of, selling and trying to start over: the White Sox and the Marlins. The Rockies probably should be, but they haven't. And then the rest are all trying. The thing is you look at what the Rangers and Diamondbacks did a few years ago. That's a huge deal that they were able to kind of go from losing records to the World Series in the span of like a year. The Royals lost 56 games in 23 and then made the postseason and won 87, or only won 56 games in 23, then won 87 or 88 games last year, made the postseason. So I think a lot of people believe with the extra wild card they can stay in it longer, and that's a big deal for them. So that's why it's hurt the Mariners. There isn't a team like the Pirates that wants to dump somebody. Even teams like the Twins and Brewers are trying to cut payroll a little bit, are finding ways to do it without getting rid of talent where they can still compete. I mean, even the Rays, we just saw that. Ha-Sung Kim, they signed Ha-Sung Kim to a deal. The Rays, you automatically think they're going to dump players, but they aren't. And that's been a problem for the Mariners.
Ryan, you pointed out like the value of prospects isn't what it used to be, and I compared it to as like varsity coaches in high school looking at that 8th grade group saying, "Oh man, in 3 or 4 years we're gonna have a good ball club." Is there anyone that you feel like is the closest to being ready out of that group in the top 100?
Well, Harry Ford isn't in the top 100. I don't think in a lot of rankings anymore, but he's obviously the closest. Like if there was an injury to a catcher, I think we could see him. He'll be in AAA. Is my guess to start the season. So that means he's close. Cole Young obviously is going to be at AAA as well. At least that's their plan that they've said that he'll be at AAA. So he's a call away. I mean, I guess if Cole Young came into camp and did what Julio did a couple years ago, they could put him on the roster. I'm not expecting that. I feel like Julio was a little more advanced coming in physically too, was more prepared to handle a situation, but everything about Cole Young, what makes him good is the maturity, the swing, all that kind of stuff. Sure, he could come in and compete for the second base. I'm sure that's what they're telling him. But no, I don't look at any of those position players as guys that are major impact. Laz Montez, a couple years away. Colt Emerson still hasn't played a full season of baseball due to injury. Johnny Farmelo has been injured. So, they have a lot of potential, but it's just that it's potential. It's like Bump, I'm sure you remember, and I remember thinking back to when I had to cover the Huskies for a year and a half, and besides Sark and I never getting along one day of our lives, I hated recruiting because, like, prospects and recruiting, it's a lot of fans are just obsessed with potential, but potential doesn't win now, and that's the problem that the Mariners are at. Everything about them is potential to be successful. Even if you look at the major league roster, the potential to be successful is based on the idea that J.P. Crawford has a bounce back season and Julio has his normal season and not what he did last year. And Victor Robles is something closer to what he was last year versus what he's been his whole career. It's all potential on their offense instead of having depth to offset if guys have a bad season. That's what happened to them last year. So many guys had bad seasons and they didn't have anybody around to help pick up the slack. Well, this year they lost a bunch of guys and they're looking at 2 major infield positions where you're looking to either use a prospect or a utility guy, and that's just an issue that you don't expect for a team that has kind of their situation. I mean, like, they have a solid stadium. They draw fans. They have 2 owners as part of the ownership group that are billionaires, and yet they're not spending the money to even make it marginally better on the, you're not spending even a little bit to make it marginally better. And granted, these guys aren't a little bit, they aren't just costing a little bit, but the problem is they didn't do anything last offseason really in spending. They had to rearrange all that money, and the year before that, like coming out of the playoff season, you felt like, okay, here's the moment where they put their foot on the gas and try and add some stuff and spend some money and go. And they didn't. That was the Tommy La Stella offseason. And then last season, they added a lot of pieces, but they also had to subtract a lot of major league pieces to get to restructure the roster. You just don't think of a team in this situation doing that.
How much of this is, to you, Ryan, a philosophical issue with how the Mariners spend or their comfort level with spending, and how much of it is new context we have about what could happen in 2026 with the CBA? You've got, regional broadcasting issues. Like, right, how much of the context do you lean into around the Mariners, and then how much of it do you point to them and go, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of uncertainty with their RSN deal, and there's a lot of uncertainty with the CBA and how it's going to affect teams moving forward. But at the same time, like, there is a certainty in that you can invest in your team and try and win before all that happens. That's the problem, is they didn't invest in this team like they should have in the past 2 years so that they could have won. They could have done something more than they did. I mean, they don't, I remember Jerry Dipoto said is like from 22 to last season, they missed out on going to the playoffs every year by a total of 4 or 5 games. And you think, oh, well, they're close. Yeah, they're close. They're close without doing enough, without supplementing enough. That should be more frustrating. That shouldn't be a positive. There are no moral victories in pro sports. You know, you want to win, you have to invest. And I think that's been my biggest criticism of the ownership group, of this new ownership group, is that they talk a lot about wanting to win and they talk about World Series and stuff. At the end of the day, they don't do enough. They don't invest enough personally into it to win. And until that mindset changes, it's never going to happen. It just isn't. I mean, instead, they're playing on the margins of the 54% philosophy of Jerry. Like, well, if you're just good every year, one year you'll have the anomaly season. Well, why not raise the bar instead of 54%? Why not raise the bar by investing in your team and winning 68% of the time, or 65% of the time, or 60% of the time? Raise that bar so that instead of having the one-off really 95 win season, you have multiple in that 10-year span. And I think that's what people didn't understand about what Dipoto said, and the jokes that people make are so awful, and they make me want to just poke my eyes out with a dull spoon. But the understanding, that kind of mentality of just being good for 10 consecutive years and hopefully having some one-offs and all that other stuff, that plays to the ears of owners that don't want to spend. Whereas if you're the Phillies and you look at last year and go, look, we invested all this to win, what are we going to do to get better?
Every time we talk, it feels like the same story, right? I'm trying to listen and get something new out of you, and there isn't anything new because it feels like the approach has been consistent. Is there anything that they've done that's a bit different than what we're used to seeing from them, or do you feel like this is a repeat of the last couple off seasons?
No, it's been the same. I mean, I think they're more willing to trade prospects this offseason, but there isn't those trades. No, it's been the same. It's the same thinking, the same mindset. And I don't think it's necessarily a mindset that Jerry Dipoto wants to have. It's a mindset that he has to adopt. It's like you said, when you're coaching football and you might want to run power I and go hard, and you have a bunch of linemen that are 5'2" and 97 pounds, or a bunch of undersized linemen, you're going to have to spread it and go. Dipoto is adapting to whatever the budget is given to him. If they gave him, 35 extra million on a budget, he would do something vastly different. I mean, we saw that. They signed Albert Pujols to a $200 million contract when he was with the Angels, and $75 million to CJ Wilson. He's not afraid to sign free agents, but from the time that he's been here, there's never been an abundance of cash for him to do that. I mean, when he was hired after the 15th season, he was told that had minimal payroll to work with. That's why he made so many of the trades on the margins, is because he was trying to restructure a roster without spending much money to do it. And since then, I mean, really, they've only decreased payroll. They've never increased, and then they did the step back, and they have never really, they've never gotten back to the season of 2016. I think it was 175 million, maybe, or is that 18? One of those years they were at 175 million. They've never gotten back to that. And really, the overall average payroll for teams has grown to north of that, but they aren't doing it. They don't believe that they need to do that to have success. I would argue that it gives you more options to have success if you increase it, even if you don't want to, or even if you may set it one way and you look out the market and say, okay, we can't get better because we're limited to what we can do, and you have to readjust and say, okay, well, then we'll reinvest more. I mean, it's like I said, at some point, it just has to be unacceptable for what has transpired the last few seasons, because the time is running out. These other guys are getting more expensive, Is it going to be a series? Is Cal Raleigh going to look around when he's a free agent a few years from now and never, been to one playoffs, and looks at this organization and says, well, they're not doing enough to win. Why would I want to stay here? I can go see Buster Posey, who went to Florida State and is a Hall of Fame catcher. I can go see him and go down to San Francisco. What is Logan Gilbert or George Kirby? The guys that truly want to win a World Series, they have to look around and say, am I going to do it here, or do I want to be like Kyle Seager and Felix Hernandez, never even sniff the playoffs? That's what they have to ask themselves.
Yeah. Ryan, before we let you go, what do you got coming up here for the Times?
I'm going to do a projected roster,
Best of luck.
which is pretty easy. I mean, like, there hasn't been any moves. Like,
Yeah.
add these pieces in here. Just kind of what to watch for at spring training, and then Adam Juice is going to do something on kind of who to watch at spring training, I believe. Just kind of that stuff, and then kind of go from there. I mean, I think in the coming days, I'm hoping they kind of announce what they're going to do with the broadcast team. I've heard, kind of what's going to happen, but like waiting for them to kind of announce it because we don't have any of the details, but that's kind of important. I think people care. Fans never get more angry than debating about announcers, so stuff like that I'm hoping here in the next couple of days. And I get down to spring training on February 12th, so I'm looking forward to 75-degree weather.
I'm guessing the stuff you've heard about broadcasting you're not allowed to tell us yet. We gotta.
I mean, like, I've only heard kind of generalities
Okay.
now. I haven't heard anything like said.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's like you kind of hear it secondhand, third hand, and so it's like I don't want to, I think the people that I talk to know what they're talking about, but then again, I don't want to come on here and be wrong.
Fair,
and have
fair.
everybody- I'm wrong enough as it is. I don't
No.
need, I don't need to be videoed here and all that. So, sorry about the internet connection. It's Havre, Montana. We just got Wi-Fi like a couple of years ago.
Last week, you in Utah. Best in the biz, Seattle Times reporter Ryan Divish. Ryan, thank you so much.
Thanks,
we appreciate
Ryan.
it, man.
Thanks, guys.